They tell us to strive, to grow, to evolve, become kinder, more mindful, more spiritual, and deep down, many of us truly want that. We want to be better, more patient, less reactive, wiser, lighter. So we work on ourselves. We fix our flaws. We monitor our thoughts. We follow teachings and techniques, read the books, recite the mantras, clean up our energy, all in the hope that we'll become a better version of ourselves. But have you ever felt that the harder you try to be good, the more divided you become? That behind all the improvement, there's still a small, tense voice whispering, "You're not enough yet." You meditate more. You respond with kindness. You control your anger. You smile even when you don't feel like smiling. And yet, something still feels inauthentic, still distant, still performative. You're doing all the right things, but not quite arriving at yourself. Why? Because the ego is clever. It doesn't mind improvement. In fact, it loves it. It loves to rebuild itself into a spiritual identity. It loves to wear new robes, to replace pride with humility on the surface, to say all the high vibrational words, to master patience not from love, but from image. You become better on the outside, but still lost within. You polish the mirror, but never look beyond your own reflection. And this is where Osho steps in quietly and says, awakening is not about becoming better. It is about the death of all that is false. Let that land, because it means the ego cannot be perfected, can only be dissolved. And everything we're trying to improve may actually be the very thing that must die. That might sound intense, even harsh, but Osho doesn't speak of death with fear. He speaks of it with freedom, because what dies is not your true self. It's the idea of who you think you are, the image, the identity, the structure, that version you've been tirelessly building, with every improvement. And when it crumbles, what's left is not failure. What's left is truth, stillness, presence, a being that has nothing to prove, nothing to protect. So in today's video, we won't talk about how to be better. We won't add another layer to your spiritual performance. Instead, we will sit in the space that opens, when all layers fall away, when the old ego doesn't know how to survive, and something else, something deeper, begins to breathe. Maybe awakening isn't about adding more. It's about subtracting everything that isn't real. Maybe you don't need to rise higher. You just need to fall inward. And maybe you're not here to perfect your ego. You're here to bury it, so your true self can live. So take a breath. Let go of the idea of becoming someone. And join me, not on the path to improvement, but on the pathless path to truth. The one that begins the moment everything false begins to end. You are not to become better. You are to become nobody. And only then truth reveals itself. Osho, love, freedom, aloneness. We live in a world obsessed with improvement. Improve your body. Improve your thoughts. Improve your relationships. Improve your karma. Even your spirituality is framed as a kind of upgrade. But Osho never spoke of awakening in terms of self-betterment. He didn't tell you to become more enlightened. He told you to let go of who thinks it needs to be enlightened, because the one chasing awakening is the ego in disguise. In the Book of Secrets, Osho says, ego is subtle. It can turn even your desire to disappear into a new identity. Look, I am the one who has dropped the ego. This is the most dangerous form of ego. Pause here. Let that sink in. You cannot conquer the ego by becoming a better version of it. You cannot improve your way into presence, because the truth is not something you reach. It is something that remains once everything false has fallen. An ego is always false. It is made of stories, of roles, of masks, of who you think you are or should be. Sometimes it is loud and proud. Sometimes it is quiet, spiritual, humble-looking. But the ego always seeks one thing: continuity. It will take any shape if it means survival. And so, we play along. We begin to improve. We meditate, but measure our calm. We serve others, but expect recognition. We let go, but secretly hope we're being seen doing it. In The Art of Living and Dying, Osho writes, "The ego is not interested in truth. It is interested in image. That's why the ego cannot awaken. Only when the ego dies, awakening is. Awakening is not a better ego. It is no ego, and that frightens us. Because who are we without our name, our achievements, our spiritual progress, our narrative of being good?" Osho invites us to sit in that emptiness, to not run from it, not dress it up, but rest in the space that remains when ego falls. In Courage, The Joy of Living Dangerously, he writes, "The fear of ego death is the fear of non-existence. But when you allow that death to happen, you discover you were never the ego. You were the watcher, silent, eternal." This is why Osho didn't encourage discipline for the sake of morality. He didn't want you to be more correct. He wanted you to be free, and freedom doesn't come by controlling yourself. It comes when there is no self left to control, when the one who measures, compares, and tries dissolves, when life is not filtered through a personality, but flows from pure awareness. This doesn't mean you disappear. It means the illusion of the you that was constructed by family, society, trauma, memory disappears. And in that space, something raw and real begins to live. Not the better version, the true one. Osho's vision of awakening was never about climbing higher. It was about falling inward. He said, "The ego is always going somewhere. The soul is always here. The moment you stop going, you arrive." So the death of the ego is not a tragedy. It is a rebirth. The pain you feel when old identities fall away is not destruction. It is liberation, but it must be total. Not a better mask, not a shinier version. A true surrender. Imagine a snake shedding its skin. It does not mourn the old layer. It does not frame the change as improvement. Simply lets go, because something deeper knows. The old is too small now. Maybe your old self, the one you've been improving, has simply become too small for you. Maybe it's time, not to become better, but to become no one. So the truth, the presence, the light you've been chasing, can finally see through your eyes, without distortion. That is awakening, and it begins where the ego ends. There is no technique now, no system, no identity left to upgrade. Only breath, only awareness, only this. The mind may still whisper, "But what now? If I don't become better, what do I do?" But that's just the echo of the old voice, the one that believes you must earn your own existence, that still clings to the illusion, "I am not enough." Yet, let it fall away. Let the question pass through like wind. Osho never asked you to become a better person. He never asked you to suppress your shadows, or replace your ego with a polished version of it. He simply asked you to look, with naked eyes, to see who is there, when no one is performing. Just be, that's all. And in that pure beingness, the whole cosmos reveals itself. Osho, maybe you don't need to call yourself awakened. Maybe you don't need a new label. Maybe you're not here to evolve into anything. You're here to dissolve, into silence, into space, into truth. And truth has no version of you. It simply is. Not something to grasp, but something to rest in. Can you rest? Not as a task, not as a means, but just because. Can you be with yourself, without your story, without your progress, without your past, just sitting as presence, still, soft, spacious? That's where awakening begins. Not in the light you achieve, but in the shadows you stop running from. Not in the image you build, but in the walls that quietly collapse. And when all of it falls, there's no voice saying, "You've arrived." There's just silence. A silence that is not empty, but full of something ancient and familiar. A silence that watches through your eyes, that breathes through your chest, that feels like home. Osho never gave you a path. He gave you a mirror, But only when you stop looking for someone in the reflection does the mirror disappear, and in its place, nothing, everything. Maybe you don't need to know more. Maybe you don't need to die to ego perfectly. Maybe you just need a few minutes of silence, and to truly listen to yourself, to the space behind your name, to the breath that needs no identity. Right now, just this. Let that be enough. Let that be everything.